tons of grading to do. But this is a subject that's near and dear to my heart, so I hope it will be interesting to you and maybe learn something and tell you a little bit about what I'm trying to do in the classroom and how I'm trying to create some both creative and scholarly work around social media and social, what I call social business, but since I'm not in the business school, I'm not officially using that word, I'm using it loosely. So, but one of the things I want to kind of set the stage is what I'm going to talk about today. One of those is what is content marketing, because that's a term that is increasingly used in advertising and marketing to describe this new way of doing things, at least by the digital media people. What is social business and why is it worthy of teaching and study? How has the social web changed marketing and promotion? And in general, why are these worthy of study? I just want to give you 2 seconds about my background here, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about it before, but I think it's important to set the stage that I come at all of these topics more as a business lawyer and somebody who's been active online rather than somebody who started out in, say, a journalism profession, because I practiced business law for 11 years with a tax degree and doing transactional work. When I started my graduate program, in the doctoral program, I ended up taking almost half of my coursework in the Culverhouse College of Business and considered switching to the business school, but I had a fellowship from College of Communication, so I didn't want to give that up, but I took a lot of courses in organizational theory, organizational behavior, management, not so much marketing, but change leadership, change management, so it's sort of the org psych kind of stuff. And so that's really my theoretical knowledge base is as much from the School of Business and Management Theory as it is from communication, although my PhD is in communication. I was self-employed on 2 different occasions, once as a lawyer and another time for several years as a freelance writer. And so I have sort of this entrepreneurial mindset of working for myself, and then I was also a shareholder in my law firm with management responsibilities, so I had a lot of business and financial management side, while at the same time advising businesses on business legal issues. And so with that, I just want to sort of set that stage. And then also today, I think I really look at communication and business, media, entrepreneurship, all of these as an opportunity, especially for students, but for anybody, not just students, to pave a new path, the third way. They're not locked into having to go work for this huge media conglomerate anymore. They don't have to work for a Fortune 500 company. They can start their own business. They have their own, basically, free tools available right now with a laptop, mobile phone, a camera of some type. They can create their own media empire. They do not need anybody else. And so that's sort of the background. The foundation for how I approach the course and how I want to start laying the groundwork for you to understand what I do is to talk about the difference between paid, owned, and earned media. And if you think paid media, you know that. That's advertising in the traditional sense. And I'm just using Coca-Cola here as an example to illustrate each of these. This is the first Coca-Cola ad. Print, small, text heavy. Of course, Coca-Cola went on to become sort of the epitome of effective traditional paid advertising, from the visual appeal of their color, photographic illustrations in the early part of the 20th century, their television ads. This is from the Coca-Cola website, but there's one of the featured stories on that website, which we'll come back to talk about this, is the Mean Joe Green commercial, which is a perfect example of super effective short television advertising from the 70s. And it's on how that ad changed his life, but Coca-Cola is telling a story around their advertising, which is very important for content marketing. And so we have paid media, we have owned media, which is the corporate website and the stories they're telling and sharing on the website. And then I took advantage of today's opportunity and I tweeted this morning a link to this story, and that's earned media. So Coca-Cola earned a share by me of this story that they have on their website. So that's an example of earned media. And what I focus on in the courses I teach is owned and earned media. We talk about how to create media that's owned and where it's housed and what to do with it, with the strategic goal of getting it in the category of earned media so that we have a loyalty approach. The other thing I want to do real quickly is define content marketing so that you have a good feel for what that is. Essentially, it's creating informative, useful, entertaining, free content that you are designing it, you're creating it in a way that's going to help your customers, your audience in some way. It's useful information that's valuable to them. Maybe it's entertaining also, but you're answering a question, telling them how your product or service is going to solve a problem. You build their awareness, you build their trust, you're telling stories about your brand, you're publishing it on a website where you own it. You do not start out by sharing all of your content on social channels because the social web changes. The Facebook changes the rules. You want to always make sure you're in control of your content. And then you share it throughout the social channels. It's not a new strategy, not a new technique. It's been around for a long time. Joe Pulizzi of the Content Marketing Institute starts the story of content marketing history with the John Deere Furrow magazine. That magazine was started as a way to educate farmers on new farming technology and help them learn business skills that would help them become more effective business people as farmers. So it was an educational tool. Of course, you know, it was helpful in selling their plows. But one of the things they discovered, or John Deere discovered when he was trying to first sell his plow, was that people didn't really know why they needed this new plow thing. And so he had to educate them on why it was worth spending money to purchase the plow. And it then evolved into the Furrow, which is still published today. And it's also relevant on the journalism side. This is a screenshot from the Alabama Media Group website, which owns AL.com, Birmingham News. They don't have a VP of news. They have a VP of content. And I don't know Mr. Wynn. I'm sure he's a great guy, so this is not anything negative about him. But it's just to point out that for the news media, it's now about content and not about news. So that's just a little aside there. Now I'm going to give you a few slides to talk about my tech history and how I came to develop this course that I call Social Media Practices, and why I feel like I'm sort of particularly uniquely qualified to be teaching this class. When I was a very little kid, I was into creating multimedia stuff. Of course, in those days, I had a cassette tape recorder, and I would actually sit in front of the TV, record Saturday Night Live skits, get another tape recorder and edit them, dual tape decks, you know, and dreamed of someday that I could have my own show like Zoom. I wrote them and asked, could I please be on Zoom, and I lived in the wrong part of the country. I didn't live in Boston. So then my aunt, forward-thinking woman she was in the early 80s, invested in the first video camera in my family, and so I was able to go about doing the same thing with video. And so I would hook it up to the TV and record stuff off MTV and then try to piece these things together. And moved on in the late 80s, I got to learn how to use a computer with the first Macintosh computer. I was in law school working as a sorority advisor for the Alabama Greek system, and the guy who was over my department said, figure out how to use this and so we can use it in the, you know, for Pamela in the office. And so I had no manual, nothing, and so easy. And that was my first non-mainframe computer experience, and really fell in love with it. And then a couple years later, I bought my first computer, and somebody gave me a bootleg copy of Microsoft Word, and I didn't have a manual. I had to type a 30-page paper in my tax law program with footnotes. And so I had to figure out how to create footnotes and use this software in 1989. And that led me to, a year later, somehow I had heard about this internet thing, although I'm not sure I called it the internet. This was in 1990. I went to a computer store and I said, I want one of those things that I can hook up to my computer so I can talk to other people around the world. And he looked at me and he said, you want CompuServe and Prodigy or Prodigy? So I said, I'll take both. And so I bought both the CompuServe system and the Prodigy system, and found that I liked Prodigy better because it let me interact with people, whereas CompuServe was a little bit more business publication oriented, so I could download magazines and stuff like that. I ended up very quickly settling into a couple of bulletin board fan groups for the Go-Go's, Mary Chapin Carpenter, and the television show The Avengers from the 60s, which I adored as a kid, and it was just starting to come back on arts and entertainment, so I was in this like nirvana of interest. And so I was interacting with people, and at this time I was practicing law, but I was spending my free time hanging out with people online, making friends, and we are still friends today. But 10 years later, I started to, we're going to come back to this in a bit, but I had started doing online content creation, so I set up a website that in 1999, 2000, I wanted to put my class notes, teaching media law, and I wanted to put those notes online. And so I figured out how to do that without any help. I taught myself HTML code and then figured out how to create websites. And it was really lame, but this is from the Wayback Machine. It's no longer out there. But I was creating content, putting videos online, sharing, updating. It was kind of like blogging, but before blogging was sort of the norm, and before a blog or a blogspot. At the same time I was doing that, I was freelancing for Vulcan Publications here in Birmingham. And they had this vision of creating an internet portal for people to come into to get all kind of information related to manufacturing trade. And so one of my jobs, in addition to writing articles for the print magazine, was to be an online content editor and maintain content for the metalworking equipment news online and fabricating equipment news online. And yes, I actually learned a lot about manufacturing trade, and proud of that knowledge. But, it was a good couple of years in the dot-com bubble burst, and my main source of income went away, and I finished my PhD and went to teach at Oklahoma State. So now back into the media side, as all of this has happened, media has started to shift their advertising dollars away from traditional paid advertising, putting it into online content. And so the same kind of content that I was creating in the early 2000s for fun, sharing it with friends around a topic of interest, is the kind of content that brands are now creating, putting on their websites and sharing through Facebook and Twitter. And so my content wasn't as sophisticated in terms of the technological capacity, but it's the same kind of stuff, and doing it really for a strategic purpose, because I was wanting to connect to people in different parts of the world and having fun and get the attention maybe of people that I admired and stuff like that. And so Procter & Gamble, this is from 2010, went from creating soap operas as their content for marketing purposes in the 30s and 40s when they owned the show and used it as their vehicle for advertising, as a content tool, to advertising on those shows. Soap operas are pretty much dead now in daytime television, and Procter & Gamble is now telling stories online with YouTube and in the commercials with the Old Spice guy and others. Just some statistics real quickly to kind of show you how relevant this is for the business world and for what students need to be learning and where the jobs are going to be. I have slides on B2B content as well as B2C content. And this is just an example. This is current data from just released in early November from the Content Marketing Institute and Marketing Profs organizations. They commissioned survey research for brands. And among the B2B companies, they're increasing the amount of content they create for marketing purposes. And by content, in the B2B sector, we have a slide on that in just a moment, but they anticipate creating a lot more. And you'll see that 48% of their marketing budget is currently, I think this, I'm going to look at this and make sure I tell you this correctly, 48% plan to increase it. It's not that the ad budget is 48%. But
B2B is business to business and B2C is business to
consumer, yes. So B2B would be anything from educational technology companies selling software to Stanford University to tool and die manufacturers selling the dies to a machine shop or anything in between. Also, I guess it would include environmental services if you're an engineer, anything where you're business person, business selling to business. But they create everything from blog posts to feature articles to slide decks, and a lot of this is repurposed content. They create white papers are a big part of B2B communications. They still create the training videos, all of that kind of content, and then it's shared predominantly on a few social platforms: LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Google+, SlideShare, and Pinterest are the main ones. And SlideShare is a huge place for sharing B2B content because of the search capabilities and the ability to embed non-slide decks now. If you have a pro account, they have incredible statistics that you can use, and so that's something we actually talk about a lot in class. On the B2C side, again, we have 45% increase coming in the content that's being created, and currently the total marketing budget is spent 28% of their total marketing budget on the consumer side goes to content creation rather than traditional advertising, and that number is continuing to go up. They basically have the same categories of content that they create on the consumer side, fewer on the white papers, slide decks, things like that. It's more video, more storytelling type content, and shared again on mainly the same social platforms. And these change from year to year. So we're coming back to Coca-Cola now, and to just, again, reiterate how important knowing how to do content creation is for students who want to get a job. Coke is essentially the #1 brand in the world still, probably officially the #1 brand, the most recognizable still. And they revealed a new marketing strategy last year that they're calling Content 2020. You can find the videos for this. It's about a 20-minute video series called Coca-Cola Content 2020 Vision. It's on YouTube. They've made it available a lot of different places, and then people have shared it as well. But they lay out their content strategy, and they're going from what they have been known for in the past, creative excellence. They're moving to content excellence, and they're shifting an increasing number of dollars, percentage of their budget, toward both content creation in-house or with freelancers outsourced creation, but within the in-house scenario. They're also enlisting their fans to create content for them, and so having user-generated content is a huge part of their new strategy. And so it's going to shift from being what maybe has in the past been a 70-30 or 80-20 on the paid ad side. It's now going to be where paid advertising in the traditional sense of billboards and maybe some television Super Bowl commercials will be maybe 20% of their ad spend, and the rest of it is going to be done creating content that is shared through the different channels. And I'm not going to show any of the video. I didn't put a link here, but it's a really fascinating to watch. And I've had students in the classes watch the video. So now I'm going to shift and talk a little bit about the course. Before I do that, any questions about content marketing, what it is, and why it's important? No? Okay. So I really have 3 core goals with the social media practices course, in addition to the traditional learning objectives. And that is to get the students to think creatively, not simply mimic whatever brands they like are doing on social or anywhere else for that matter. And I want them to get rid of rules and thinking that, well, you can only tweet once a day or twice a day or Facebook update this time of day or whatever, and have it be something that's driven by data as well as driven by audience interest and strategic objectives that are defined. And then to focus on building relationships and trust through social channels, not broadcasting a message. And these are, I think, outcomes that they can use if it's for their personal brand and getting a job, if it's something that they are entrepreneurial and they choose to start a business or a social nonprofit that's got a mission that they want to pursue, that they can use these. And we really cover a lot of content, probably the wrong word to use since I'm talking about content marketing, we cover a lot of stuff in the course, maybe too much, especially this semester. First time I taught it, I didn't get the we're kind of overwhelmed help comments, but the last two iterations have slightly younger students. Probably instead of having mostly seniors, I have more of them mostly juniors. Occasional sophomores are in there, and so it could be that. But I've had to backtrack and start going over basic web content definitions that I really didn't expect to need to do. So we cover website management, creating a WordPress site, the content, uploads, how to do that, how to embed a video in the site, and I talk to them about plugins, try to explain the difference between the free WordPress hosted sites that are more blogs versus using WordPress as a content management system. It's used by huge brands, CNN, big companies are using WordPress in their content management system. We talk about a marketing sales funnel and how that plays into the web. We'll go through some more of these. We cover social channels, search engine optimization, and how to optimize the content you create when you publish it on YouTube or you publish it on a blog post or you put it out in some other channel. You want to use categories and tags, and you need to have certain keywords. And what is all this stuff about content optimization, and getting them to at least be aware of the requirements to do that. I can't say I'm always successful, because when I require them to post some stuff to their class blog, inevitably they don't put it in a category or a tag. And so I have to go back and check off for you.
Sheree,
Yeah.
I'm kind of stuck on the marketing sales one.
Okay. We actually have a slide on that coming up.
Thank
So
you. My brain is coming up with all sorts of interesting alternatives.
Not that funnel. We talk about digital analytics. Google Analytics is shifting rapidly to what they're calling universal analytics. And while I've got several different websites of my own, and I'm playing around, and I've installed on one side both Google Analytics tracking code and Universal Analytics tracking code to illustrate that we get slightly different results. One of the things we can't really do is go into a really serious business website and look at the dashboard for their analytics and see how Universal Analytics is working. It's a point of sale tracking system. It's a kiosk engagement tracking system. It is you can link, if you have appliances or photocopiers, let's say, that are connected to the internet that you're tracking, the Universal Analytics system that Google has created will let you pull all of that data into a single analytics system and track user engagement, not just on the web or your mobile device, but across all of these points of contact with customers. So they can, if it's set up correctly, and this is really a little beyond my skill set to exactly know how to do this, but it's easy, it wouldn't be that difficult for somebody who's got a day job where that's all they're doing, and they have an IT person who can program the analytics code into a kiosk. But you can track whether the person who connects with you through their laptop and their mobile device, if they go then into Starbucks and they use their phone to make a purchase in the store, or they do a swipe of, let's say, a loyalty card that is connected to an email address that ties all of this together, or they click on a link that you've shared in an ad that's on a mobile phone or in a kiosk, they click on a link, maybe they use the QR code. All of that is pulled together so you could actually track, did this person first find out about us or this particular development that we're promoting, say? Did they find out about it on Facebook or Twitter, or was it through an email marketing campaign or something else? And we'll talk about why that's important. We look at brand best practices. They have to do some case studies, and then it all culminates in the final plan that they develop. In the past, I've used real clients for this. This semester, I created hypothetical clients because the clients I had picked out just weren't working out. So where they have to very comprehensively define people, they define the audience for that particular client, consistent with the business objectives the client has laid out. This semester, I've given those to them. They define the people, they define objectives that they're going to use in the content and the social channels to achieve those objectives, develop strategies to make that happen, and then the tactics, which is, what time of day am I going to post this on which channel. So that's the end part of it. That's really, for practical purposes, the least important thing that they learn. So this is the marketing funnel. Historically, outside, the idea was branding and marketing to create awareness, consideration. You want people to prefer your product. It's top of mind. They're going to then take some action. Once they become loyal customers, they will become advocates for your brand. And so historically, under the old broadcast way, we found out about things through advertising, TV, radio, billboards. Once we sort of found out about it, the brand might communicate with people through direct mail, brochures, things like that, maybe email to some extent in the early days. They would go in and take a look at products, maybe fill out a form for more information, sort of a lead generation thing if you're in, say, real estate or whatever. In-store purchases would be the point at which they would take action on your brand. And then you could build loyalty by giving them a rewards card, and they could go swipe it every time they bought 10 cups of coffee, they get a free one, that kind of thing. So that's the old way. And now with social media, this is a guy who published a book at the Yale Press that focuses on these traditional marketing funnel levels of engagement and connected these to the social networks. And he's not the only person to do that, but he has a really nice graphic that I told him I was going to use it in class, and he said, awesome, great. And so I figured I could use it in this presentation too, since he said it was okay for class. But, web search, just general buzz, hearing about something online. We talk about online research and how user reviews are playing into the search results now, social sharing, so that Google has just implemented a new practice that's a little, people are a little concerned about the privacy implications. You can opt out of it. But if you have endorsed a product, I'm a big fan of Sierra Trading Post, and they are really active on social channels. And so I'm frequently commenting on how great they are. And it gets shared, and so it's potentially possible that one of my, raving great tweets about how awesome Sierra Trading Post is could appear in an ad if because I've made it public and I haven't opted out yet. And so Google is letting brands buy advertising and take advantage of these social search whatevers. And so the same thing, Facebook tried this. If you like certain things, your picture was appearing on ads. They ended up settling for quite a few $1 million with people who didn't like that. Not sure how it's going to play out. Then we determine our preference for brand, and we talk about it in the social channels. We can get discounts, mobile, we can take text messages or QR code scanning, or just mobile ads that appear in your phone as you are walking past. If you have near field communication on your phone, which most people do, they have a smartphone, they walk by a store, there's a little device that picks up your phone signal, and suddenly a coupon appears on your phone, and you can pop in and buy a new bicycle or whatever it is that you're interested in. And then, of course, the social buzz that plays back into each other. So, marketing funnel. Make sense? Okay. One of the things that I do in the class is introduce them to Google Analytics. And I show this because I use myself as a guinea pig. And like I said, I have a couple websites, and I have tracking code on it. I will not claim to have the most trafficked websites in the world, but more than some people who are in my stage of engagement. But I've actually allowed the students to become users on this account, and they can go in and generate reports. They can play with all of the different options and see what these things mean. I've tried to talk to them about it in class, but it was, can we just play with it? So it's like, okay, we'll hurt anything. So I just I added them as account users on this particular Google Analytics, the Google Analytics account for this website, and so they can go in and experiment with what all this stuff is. And we talk about, what is a bounce rate? A bounce rate is if somebody leaves your site with some Facebook ads to just see if I can place some ads to promote some posts inside Facebook and get people to opt into an email list or to at least click on a link and read a blog post. And those are not going to be very expensive, so I'm just going to throw out 25 or 50 bucks over the next couple of weeks and set up some goal conversions, and so we can see how this plays out. Hopefully maybe I can convince some of my friends to at least click on the ad so that I can have some data to show. But so that, and then here, this is an example of what Google Analytics shows where people enter the website and where they go on the website. So we can look at this and figure out what kind of content would we put on a website to get them to the place where they're going to maybe give us their email address to opt in, that we can then contact them later to try to get them to sell, buy a product or send them more information. We're not going to make a sale initially. But we can also look at what content are they engaging with, how are they transitioning through the website, which is very important, not just which pages they look at, but which page do they go before they go to the next page. And then see what's on that page. Is it a color? Is it a photo? Is it copy? We can start to test that and see what is it that attracts people to those pages versus these other pages that we thought were so awesome because we had a...
Sheree,
Hmm?
it's too small.
Yeah.
I'm too old. Is also included in there how long they stay on the page?
Yes.
Is that the little itty bitty blurry number underneath?
Average visit duration on this particular screen is here, but it does provide...
So it does track that?
Yeah, it does track that.
Is it just a click through, or is it,
Mhm.
and is that done like in seconds or something?
Yeah, it's done in, let's see, I think it goes down to hundreds of seconds.
Okay. Sure.
So you can identify which pages people are staying on the longest. Now, one of the things Google Analytics does not do, it does not have a heat tracking map. That is something that is very affordable with a service called Crazy Egg or Clicky are two examples that are affordable for small businesses. And tomorrow they're going to be doing mini reports on some of these tools, and one of those is that particular combination. But they will actually give you visual representations of where people, if they're on, like if they're on a touchpad or a mouse, like where are they scrolling to, like what path are they following, so that you can figure out how to change the layout of your site to make it more likely for them to track through.
It's just like it follows the biomechanical path that is favorable for others.
Mhm.
That is
And
bizarre.
Facebook just implemented this as well, didn't they, this last week?
I think so.
That's pretty crazy.
So,
Watching shoes and
Yeah.
sort of the nuts and bolts of the course now. So that's kind of the big picture of what we talk about. And we talk about some of the assignments and then have time for questions. We do actually read some books. I've varied it from semester to semester. This one's brand new for this semester, and this one's brand new. These two I've used in the past, all the way through the Clue Train Manifesto. If you've never read the Clue Train Manifesto, there's a free version online. You can find it at cluetrain.org. They have it completely free there. You can buy it. And then I have in the syllabus a list of web, you can call them blogs. I kind of call things blogs, but they're really informative websites with massive amounts of content that I highly recommend that they check in on at least once a week. I haven't found a good way to test on this because there's just so much content, and I don't want them to be regurgitating stuff to me. So I have them share nuggets, and we'll talk about that. But these are just some of the resources. And if you want copies of the syllabus and that sort of thing, I was going to bring some, but I forgot to make copies until it was too late. So the Clue Train Manifesto, just to talk about that for a minute. In 1999, a couple of guys in Silicon Valley who were marketing gurus saw what was coming as the web is starting to emerge from this static one-to-many still approach to user-generated content that's more dynamic and interactive. And they wrote 95 theses, like Martin Luther, except about basically the new world of internet communication. And the gist of it is that markets are now conversations. It's not a broadcast of a message that we are going to force you to do something. We're going to have a conversation with you. And that's where I try to start. The first thing I ask them to do on the first class is I send them out to read the 95 theses and come back and we talk about what is their favorite of those, or which one resonates with them the most. We also watched a video by this guy. I won't play it. I actually give a preface because it's Sanford. He is fond of using profanity in a very casual way. He's a New Jersey, New York guy. Gary Vaynerchuk, brilliant social marketing person. He started out in his family's wine business, was Wine Library TV, and around 2006 started doing videos where he did wine tastings on YouTube and increased the family wine sales from a couple million to something like 25, 30 million a year in almost overnight through videos on YouTube. And he parlayed that into marketing consulting firm VaynerMedia, which is his main business now, with his brother. And he goes around speaking on all of this. And he talks about context and using social media, not to broadcast, but to engage, but sort of more from a strategic business standpoint, to research your customers and find points of contact to interact with them. And in this particular clip, he tells the story of a customer they had a new customer contacted the wine library store and placed a huge order from Chicago for $25,000 worth of wine. And so he asked his assistant to go find out something about this guy. And he found out on Twitter, they found him on Twitter and found out he was a huge Chicago Bears fan. And so they followed him for a little bit, and he was constantly talking about the Chicago Bears quarterback. So they went on eBay, bought an autographed jersey from the Chicago Bears quarterback, and sent it to him, said, "Thanks for your order, we appreciate having you as a new customer." And now, they have this customer for life. And so it's that kind of market research, the contextual knowledge that you can get. So I try to instill that into students. And we talk about what is content marketing, and what is storytelling, and how do those connect? Because it's not just about putting out really boring bits of information for people, but it's telling them something that solves a pain point or helps them in some way understand how your product is going to help their lives be better, and connect with them emotionally, not manipulatively, but truly trying to help people. And the brands that are doing that are the ones that are succeeding. And that's where, we have to teach the students who are marketing and communication students, that's the kind of content they're going to have to create and the kind of strategies they're going to have to use to tell their story and to get it out there. And we talk about how everything is built around your website. So you as a student may not be a web designer, but you've got to have the website for your business or nonprofit be the centerpiece of everything that you do. And I'm not the first person to say this. There are tons of consultants and gurus who preach this kind of stuff, and so those things that they read are the stuff that we talk about. But these are some things, and one of the main things any business or nonprofit needs is to have an email list that they're building. MailChimp has a free version for up to the first 500, so there's no excuse for a small business to not start building an email list of contacts, potential customers, and then how to filter these around. I want to go back real quick and mention one thing. The required reading. This is a new book I added. This guy, Pat Flynn, I included this year for two reasons. One is this book is published on a new platform called Snippet. And it's really cool multimedia publishing platform. It's also available as a Kindle book, but it has embedded in it video if you're on an iPad and you have it from Snippet. $2.99. It's just a cool way to look at how you can do multimedia publishing nowadays for nothing, for free. But Pat is a super nice guy, and he started out his career a few years ago as an architect. He got downsized in 2000. I think he got laid off in 2009, and he was devastated because his dream had been to be an architect, and he was a project assistant at that point. And he started listening to podcasts, which is part of our course that we talk about, and just to pass time because he was in his last 2 months of his job. He started trying to figure out, he couldn't find another job. There were no architecture jobs in Southern California, even remotely related to architecture. And so he started hearing about doing things on a small business on the internet. And he had created a blog to help him prepare for the LEED certification exam that architects have to take. So he had just essentially had this blog out there for his own personal use, where he created notes and study guides, put it out there, and so then he could access it from wherever he was on the web and study his stuff wherever he was when he had a few minutes. And he decided to add Google Analytics to that and discovered like he was getting thousands of visitors to that website because other people were trying to learn to study for the LEED certification exam, and they had found his website. So one of his friends suggested that he create an ebook of his notes that were free, available on the website, Study for the LEED exam. So he did that and published it as a PDF using a free service called eJunkie. He sold it with a PayPal account for like $19 a month. And within a few months, he was making several $1,000s a month. Within the first 6 months, he was making more than he made as an architect or as a trainee, and is now in double six figures within 3 years, speaking, getting $5,000 or $6,000 to speak at conferences for financial bloggers and things like that. And he is just a super nice guy. Went from an unemployed 25-year-old about to get married to taking his blog, monetizing it, and creating his dream life so that now he gets to stay home with his 2 babies and his wife. He's just turned 30 years old, and he is, at least in some circles, sort of a celebrity for how he did this, but he's not even the only one. He just happened to have written a book about it. And so I had the students read it to see this is what you can do if you learn to market yourself to the internet and take advantage of this world of opportunity that you have. So that was that. But after we cover those basics, I wanted to make sure to get this in. This is not necessarily the most important thing we do in the class, but one of the things I do is they have to create a program, a plan for a podcast series. Y'all listen to podcasts? Anybody? Okay, good. I love them. I was like a geek. And so I started a little podcast last year, and I thought, I'm going to have students do this because this would be a great experience for them. Because they're mostly, communication students, and it's kind of radio-like. So, but the reason it's important for the class, besides I wanted to do it, is that the trend is massive in terms of the number of people who are listening to podcasts. And this is from Arbitron, the radio people, so online radio. This was last year, so the data is going up, as you'll see from the USA Today report. As of data collected in 2012, 36 million people were listening to podcasts at least once a month. August 15th, 2013, USA Today has this feature, podcasting is back, anybody has now got a podcast, which is true. I mean, there are gazillions of podcasts being started every day by people who are talking about their favorite television show to business consultants who are talking about social media strategy. And that's, I spend all my trips back and forth, I'm listening to this stuff to try to keep up with what I can keep up with to know what to teach and what to do myself. But there are a lot of people who now have audiences much larger than talk radio, terrestrial talk radio. So the students have to create, and I require, they can work in teams or they can work alone, depending on their preference, but they have to give me a synopsis for the show, 5 episodes, what it would be about, and then they create a sample episode. And I actually pay for them to upload it. We tag it properly for iTunes using software for that. We upload it to a media hosting site that professional podcasters use, and then we publish it on one of the class blogs, socialmediaclasspodcast.com, so they can take the embedded audio file, put it in their portfolio. They have to create the cover art. They have to write a blog post with the show notes in it. And it's a sample of their work. And they also learn how to do podcasting in the process. They're probably not going to start a podcast, most of them, but they might. But if they go to work for somebody who thinks a podcast is a good idea, now they know how to do it, and they have this skill set that probably nobody else in a communication program or business school would have. Also have them, like I said, do the nugget stuff where they have to go find things and share them with the class, post them to the blog. I'm a big believer in that they have to be self-motivated. I don't like to have a quiz every Friday on current social media news. It's just, it's not the way to learn. If you have to be if you're forced into it, then this is not going to be the right field for you, because there is no end to the learning. I never get caught up. I always feel like I'm behind, and you just have to. I also create little online scavenger hunts where I send them out to look at different websites that have tools related to social media, and then they have to answer some questions. So that way I actually have proof that they had to do it. And mini reports where I give them a list of topics. Sometimes they're brand case studies. Sometimes we look at some niche social networks. We didn't do that this semester. I focused this time on the tools and resources and analytics that they're doing. And they have to do a short presentation in class, but they have to compile everything they find about that, write up a report, put it on the blog, embed videos, embed images, infographics, whatever they find useful. So it's, again, something they can link to, tangible evidence of their work to show that they're studying something. And it's out there for them for whenever. The students from the past classes can still get to their reports. On that, we do mini campaigns. Did not go well this semester, and I'm rethinking that in the future, but it is something I started after the first semester as a hands-on opportunity. I think that's where the overwhelm comes from, because they want to get into it immediately, get their hands dirty, but they don't know all of the lingo, and then they get in and start to get their hands dirty, and it's a little bit overwhelming. So I'm not sure going forward if I'm going to start with that. I may move it a little bit more into the middle of the semester, but they always discover how hard it is to get somebody to share, and they find out that if I just put one photo on Instagram each week, it's not going to get much engagement. Or if I update Facebook once a day because that's all they want to do, then they don't. It teaches them about content lifespan in the social web. If you're only following 100 people on Twitter, you're going to see everything they share. But like most people are following hundreds, if not thousands of people, and so the thought leaders are not going to see what you're sharing. The influencers, the people that your brand wants to reach out to get them to share, if you're not sharing more frequently, it's not going to show up in their streams. So we try to learn that. And I mentioned this earlier. For the comprehensive plan they write for a real or almost real client, they have to use the post approach, so it's a very systematic planning process where they identify your audience. They have to write bios of hypothetical audience people, and I just reviewed the ones that they turned in for this semester, and then some of them are not specific enough. A dad with 2 kids who likes to play golf, that's not an audience avatar. I want you to tell me what their hobbies are, what kind of car they drive, what they watch on television, not that they watch television, what do they watch on television. So we have to really get into knowing the audience. And so it's kind of like market research, but it's more brainstorming for the hypothetical. And then they have to tell me what are the key performance indicators you're interested in. The number of followers you get, not important. How much engagement you get, how many shares you get, that's where we start to get more interested. Ideally, conversions, that we get their email list, we get a lead, we get a sale. And then they have to create sample content in the sense of a couple of sample tweets. They don't have to create all of it, but just something to show they worked through that, to explain it to the client what it is that they're supposed to create. They have to put together an editorial calendar. When are we going to create this? When are we going to publish it? And how are we going to share it around the circle, the spokes of the wheel I mentioned earlier. So that, we also talk a little bit about content curation, because sometimes it's impossible to create it all yourself. And one of the best ways to build relationships is to share other people's content, and not, you don't want to just broadcast your own, or even if it's great content you want to be creating. We look at some tools that will help automate that process. I also bring in guest speakers when I don't feel like I'm going to impose on them too much. First semester I had Renee Willett from the Weather Channel. We go to all the social media, and then she did a webinar with us. David Greiner from Lucky. He's moved on now. He's got his own consulting business he's starting up. So that's really it for me. You can answer questions. I went almost to the end, so, but I'll stay as long as you want. Yes.
I
I was struck